I'm Chérie Petersen. I'm in our Institute for Learning. I'm our distance education program coordinator. I've worked with ARUP for 20 years, well, just over 20 years now, actually, and started in what we called outreach support at the time. I've worked very closely with our ARUP laboratory clients, hospital laboratories, in helping them develop business solutions to help address the needs of their marketplace and increase their laboratory testing volume. I did that for a good 12 years and then moved over to the Institute for Learning. I've worked mostly as a consultant with our clients in helping them to develop customer service skills, service excellence cultures, leadership skills, communication skills. And then as the secondary thing, which you guys always hear me introducing our speakers, is to support the educational needs of our clients. And we do that obviously through these types of venues like we are with you, as well as our educational website, the arup.utah.edu. So I'm responsible for developing and deploying that educational content on that side. So enough about me. I do want to tell you, this will be the first time that I've provided any of the trainings that I do, and I probably do about 20 to 25 different lectures, but I always do them in person. The trainings that I write and I develop are very much meant to be interactive. So we're going to try this, so please bear with me as I present information that I'm very used to being very interactive with. So I'll just try to present it to you. Don't necessarily expect the responses, and we'll just see and we'll go from there. This presentation is entitled, Are You a Customer Service Have or Have Not? And I suspect that many of you know customer service providers that are good at it and some that are really not good at it. And with my experience consulting in the lab industry, in this industry, we have some folks that are not necessarily good at customer service. But again, why should they be? They didn't go into laboratory medicine to do the face-to-face people contact, frontline customer service types of things. And in fact, I've heard it referred to a lot. The people who are in laboratory are the ones that thought about nursing and then decided, no, I really don't want to do nursing, but I'd love to do laboratory medicine. And so our folks aren't necessarily geared to or educated in, or let me just say comfortable with, that face-to-face soft skill customer service. So I suspect a lot of you, and I know a lot of folks in the lab industry that are not necessarily what I would classify as a customer service have. So we're going to talk about that. And what I want to do is do this from the perspective of you being a customer. That's where I want to kind of start out. I don't want to necessarily talk about what we do in our industry and then give you the skill sets for it per se. But what I want you to do, because I think we can mostly identify this way, is when we put ourselves in the customer role ourselves. I have this slide up here. It says, as a customer yourself, what behaviors and situations do you find absolutely irritating? So that's what I want you to do. I'm going to go through some things that I think as a customer, I know I'm irritated with. And most of the examples I'm going to give are ones here in the lab workplace, here in my department, or throughout the workplace here in the lab that I've encountered. But certainly I don't want you to limit your thoughts to what we see here in the lab. I want you to think about yourself in the role of being a customer at the grocery store, or a customer at the bank, or being on the phone with a customer service agent for Comcast, or your American Express or Discover card or something like that. So I want you to kind of think about that. What is it that drives you crazy? What irritates you as a customer yourself? So I'm going to go through my list. And as I go through this list, I want you to see if you've seen yourself or felt like yourself in this situation as well as a customer. But also, I want to see if you can start thinking about common threads, common themes. What is the general concept that's missing? In this, as customer service providers do these kinds of irritating things, what is it that's missing or lacking in common themes? So I want you to think about that. So I'm going to go through my list. I'm going to warn you, my list is long because there are a lot of things that customers get irritated with. So people who don't even bother to say thank you. I'm confident that you've encountered that as a customer. You go, you take your business, to this place of business, and you're a good patron, and they don't even say thank you. The easiest thing that a customer service provider can possibly do to acknowledge you as a valuable customer is to say thank you, and you don't even get a thank you. In fact, oftentimes you'll get an eye roll or an irritated look or an I'm busy look. All right, so another one, when people continue their conversation with a coworker as they are answering the phone or when a customer walks in. I know that this has happened again to many of you, and I love this one. I play with this one. I toy with this one when this happens. So I love what happens when I'll call somebody, they pick up the phone. They're not quite ready to answer the phone yet, but they pick up the phone. They finish their conversation with their coworker, and then they'll answer the phone. Hi, may I help you? Something like that. And I love when I get to overhear things like lunch plans, something like they're saying, yeah, let's go ahead and we'll go to Pizza Hut. And then they'll say, oh, hello, can I help you? And you know what I'll do? I love this. I'll say, pizza? That sounds great. Where and when can I join you? And they are caught so off guard when I do that. But I always kind of make a point when they've had this kind of faux pas that they know that I noticed. So that's one that happens. Rudeness. That's just plain and simple people who are just abrupt, rude, not very thoughtful. Typically, they appear as unhappy, and they're just rude in that time and in that exchange. Oh, I love this one. Getting a long answer when a short one will do the job. We had somebody that worked in our department that was notorious for this. You would ask her something, and you just needed the direct short answer. But no, you didn't get the direct short answer. You got the long answer. You got the one that included oftentimes TMI. Way too much information for me. So that's another one. Sometimes you've got to be cognizant that a short answer is really what customers are looking for, and they don't necessarily need all of the background, all of the details, and then also how your day is going sometimes. They like to add a lot of information. Being made to look stupid in front of others. I've had customer service providers that have made me feel stupid, like I didn't understand or I didn't know. The same individual that I was referring to in the bullet point before kind of did the same thing. She was responsible for ordering office supplies. I came up and I said, hey, do you think you could order whatever, this specific pen or something? I got lectured to. I got berated. I was told, before you come up and even ask me for anything, why don't you go check the supply closet? Because there are plenty of those pens in that supply closet, something to that effect. And all my coworkers were in earshot. Just like you, open office space. You guys are in the labs. It's very open. Anything that anybody says to anybody else is pretty much heard by everybody else. So being made to look stupid in front of others, that never feels great. No one around to help. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a store. I want to spend my money. I have a lot of it to spend that day because I have my 2 children with me and they want to spend a lot of money. I can't find a soul that's really interested in helping me. So that's another issue. Oh, this is another good one. Another favorite right here. Having to hear about the challenges of doing somebody's job. Essentially, these are the people that complain about how hard their job is and the stuff that they have to put up with. So you go in and you're trying to get something, and this customer service provider, whoever it is, ends up saying, oh, I have people who ask me for this kind of stuff all the time. Do you know what it takes to put that report together? Or do you know what it takes for me to have to answer that question? And, in the meantime, I'm answering the phones and I'm trying to do my mandatory training on the computer. And it's just crazy. I can't believe how I'm supposed to be able to do my job when people like you basically step in and ask me and interrupt me. That kind of a response. When you feel like you're an interruption and then you have to hear about how hard their job is, that can be off-putting. Not being organized. This is really about your space or even your conversation. People who are scattered in their conversations and can't have organized dialogue and provide organized thought process or content, but even in the workspace as well. And so let me tell you a little story about an indicator that I would look at. using organization as something that told me something about the person. So when my kids were little, when they were in elementary school, whenever I would go to visit the school, I would make sure that I always went to walk by the classroom of the grade above them. So say they were in third grade, my son would be in third grade. I would make sure I would walk by the classrooms, the fourth grade classrooms. Why did I do this? Because I was spying. I was looking at the teachers. I was looking at their classrooms. I was looking to see, is the class organized? Is the environment in control? What does the teacher's desk look like? You know, is it scattered? Does it have stuff everywhere? Is this an organized person? Does this person run a disciplined classroom? Because if they didn't, and it looked disorganized and it looked cluttered and it didn't look like organized chaos, which I was absolutely fine with, I didn't want my child in that classroom. I wanted my child to have someone who was organized, could put together a thoughtful idea that could teach. And so organization and not being organized can really be disruptive to others as they're engaging in the customer service experience. Being interrupted while you are talking. This is a hard one for me. I tend to interrupt people because I'm thinking ahead, and I tend to do that. This is something I've had to very consciously think about. But customers don't like being interrupted, and I see it happen more often than not when they're trying to describe a problem or share with you what they're trying to accomplish, and they're not allowed to finish. And we just make the assumption that we know what they're going to ask, and so we kind of finish the sentence or we interrupt because we're busy. But customers don't like that. It can be extremely rude, disrespectful. Hearing employees talk about other patients or customers, and let me add here, coworkers as well. Like I said, we have open work environments. This one is very difficult. We have to be very careful. But how uncomfortable have you been as a customer? Say you're at the grocery store. This happened to me just the other day. Just the other day. You're at the grocery store, you're at the checkout line, and you've got the checker and the bagger. They've done their thing that they're supposed to do. Hi, how are you? Did you find everything you were looking for? And then once they've asked those questions, it's just kind of passing time as they check your groceries. Well, I had this cashier and bagger. I'm not kidding you, were talking about another coworker in such a disparaging way. It made me uncomfortable to be standing there. I couldn't believe that they were so unconscious of what they were doing. I got to the point that I said, I'm kind of uncomfortable hearing you talk about Kimberly that way. I don't think she'd like you talking about her quite like that. And I think they were horribly embarrassed. We have to be careful. We've got patients families, we have coworkers that hear us talk about other coworkers. So talking about others in a way that wouldn't be appropriate or respectful is a really bad customer service move and can put customers off. It makes a suggestion about you and your organization. Failing to understand what's needed or what the issue is. It drives me crazy as a customer when I'm trying to describe what I need and I'm getting no connection whatsoever. None. The example that I kind of want to use here, and maybe you guys will recall this, maybe not, but a Seinfeld episode where Jerry Seinfeld and Elaine, they're at the car rental reservation desk. They walk up and Jerry Seinfeld says, I have a reservation for a rental car. And the agent says, we don't have a car. There are no cars available. And there's this comedic banter about, well, then what's a reservation for? Doesn't that mean you would have a car if I make a reservation? There should be a car. How can there not be a car? Isn't that the point of the reservation? And it reminds me of this exact type of scenario. That car rental agent didn't get it. Here's Seinfeld trying to say, that's the point of a reservation. And she's like, I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have any cars available. There's just not a car available. She wasn't understanding what he was confused about or what he was frustrated with. She just wanted to make the point that they didn't have a car. I'm hoping some of you remember that Jerry Seinfeld episode. That made me laugh a lot. People who don't smile. In a customer service role, smiling says a lot. It provides a disposition. It makes people feel welcome and comfortable. So people who don't smile can be very upsetting or disturbing for customers as they try to engage with your organization. dealing with someone who's just too rigid and simply unwilling to bend at all. And I think in the lab industry, this is something that we have a hard time with because we have processes and procedures that absolutely have to be followed. There are things that we can't bend on, and that's a given. And I agree with that. There are things that we cannot bend on. But for that point specifically, we have to be so cognizant that there are times where we can be flexible, that we can bend. And we need to do that when we can to compensate for the times that we can't. So maybe the example is something like specimen processing, and a sample comes in and it's mislabeled. We all deal with that. We all deal with mislabeled sample. Of course, we have to follow process and procedure, but sometimes, and it depends on the policies in your lab, and as I've gone from one lab to another, they do handle this a little bit differently, but sometimes labs are able to go ahead and test that sample and then result it out with a footnote. In the meantime, getting another sample that's then labeled properly. Just try to see where you can have some flexibility, because there are times that we just can't be flexible. And so this can be really frustrating for customers because there are so many times that we absolutely have to be rigid. But we cross that over into everything. And it's the nature of a laboratorian to just follow that process and procedure. Look for opportunities where you don't have to be so rigid. Look for opportunities where there's compromise and where there's alternative solutions. Think creatively. Feeling rushed because it seems they have more important things to do than deal with you. There are times I'm dealing with people and you know they're busy because they're rushing you through the circumstance and they're rushing you through your dialogue and they're rushing you through your request. That can be off-putting as well. People who act like you don't matter. Customers matter. Customers are very important. I'm going to present to you a little bit about who these customers are. But customers are very important to the work that we do. They're critical to the work that we do. So making them feel like they're not important or they don't matter or they're less important in your system or your process can be a very disastrous outcome. Where you are on the phone with someone or even in person and you don't feel like you're getting their full attention. I do have to admit that my 15-year-old says this to me all the time. He's like, Mom, I don't have your full attention. You are thinking of something else. You are doing something else. You are looking at your phone. And I'm like, I can talk to you and look at my Instagram stuff. I can do this. And he's like, no, you can't. Because then you never remember what I'm telling you. So there are times that I know that we can feel as customers that people aren't giving us their full attention. And so giving your full attention is going to be very critical to successful customer service. Being lectured to. So I alluded to this one a little bit earlier. We certainly had an employee here that did this often. Took every opportunity that if something wasn't the way she thought it should be, you definitely got lectured to. And the thing about the customer and the customer service role is that it's not equal. It's not an equal role. We have to make sure that we are being extremely respectful of the value of customers. And they shouldn't feel like they're being talked down to, disrespected, undervalued, or unappreciated. So we don't want to be lecturing to them at all and making them feel like we're putting them in their place. So we need to be careful of that. People who jump to a conclusion about what you're talking about or in need of without really letting you finish. And this was a lot like what I already described, but they want to jump in. You guys, I'm sure, have all been in the situation. We answer the same question every day. I know that phlebotomists answer the same question every day. I know the people in sample triage, they're answering the same question every day. The people at the bench, you can catalog these questions. You get a call about the same thing every day, and you give the same answer every day. And I know that there are situations where it's even the same person that calls every day with the same question, and you're still having to answer that question. We need to be respectful, let people finish their question, make sure that we hear it, because inevitably, when we cut them off or we jump in, we're the ones that are going to have egg on our face, because if we would have let them finish, we would have heard a different nuance maybe to the question. So allow people to finish, don't cut them off, don't interrupt them. And even though you've answered the question a million times, in the laboratory, that's what we are. We're consultants, we're educators. we help them understand the very complex laboratory information they need to use in order to provide the best patient care possible. That's our role. We really do have to step up to that and recognize that it's an important and valuable role that we play. And we are going to get asked questions over and over again because what we do is incredibly complex and so critical. People who are loud and not very discreet. So I'm going to use a coworker example here again, and it has nothing to do with laboratory or customer service per se, but is a great example of being loud and not very discreet. So I live in the cubicle world. I know you guys live in the open lab space for the most part, so it's very, very, very similar. I have a coworker who oftentimes will come over and share a story about just something going on in her life. And when she tells the story, it's loud. And because it's personal in nature, I'm embarrassed for her and for me because everybody's hearing the story over and over. And then that's the other thing, is that then the story gets repeated over and over. And I hear it from the other aisle of the cubicle being repeated. So when we're having conversations, we want to be discreet. We want to have an appropriate volume, make sure that we're not broadcasting it through our open lab space or our open cubicle space. Be respectful of people that way. And also being loud and is just kind of disruptive to the workflow. So the tone in someone's voice that suggests they don't care, they aren't interested, or they're just trying to get rid of you. I know you've all heard it. So I've mentioned that I have kids. I'm sure there are plenty of you that have had kids. You know what I'm talking about when I say tone. You can say the right thing, you can use the right words, but you can say it with the wrong tone and it can communicate the wrong message. So tone is really critically important. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. People who don't have a clue, I think I'm going to stop right here. I think you're probably thinking, wow, this is a long list. I know it is a long list and I'm not done. All right, so people who don't have a clue about how to solve a problem, and even worse, they don't even show the effort to try. This is where job knowledge is so critical, just understanding your organization, but it's absolutely frustrating to need help as a customer and to be talking to someone who is clueless, who just doesn't know enough about the organization, doesn't even know who to go to or how to help you. And then even worse than that, they don't even show an interest in trying. They'll just turn you in and say, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. You know, you might want to come back later and see if somebody else is up here, up at the front that can help you. They don't even show an effort to try. So when people complain about how busy they are just because they are having to pick up the slack for others at that time, and this is essentially throwing their coworkers under the bus. So this is dialogue I've heard in the workplace a lot. I'm so busy, and I'm so busy because Sally just can't seem to do her job. She's like over here, and then I end up doing all the work. So you hear dialogue like that. And when customers overhear things like that, it really doesn't reflect well on your organization. And it really does throw your coworkers under the bus. I know. See, look, there's another slide. I'm still not done. An expression on someone's face that just kind of says, I wish you would just leave. I wanted to go back to doing the nothing I was doing before you came and walked in the room. So I'm sure you've all seen that. You walk in and people are like, I was busy. I was doing something else. And even if that something else was checking their Facebook page or checking their text messages or just something else they're distracted with. And they look at you like, seriously, do I have to stop what I'm doing so that I can pay attention to you? That can be annoying. When you feel like you are being talked down to, as if you are stupid because you may not understand the jargon someone is using. We use a lot of acronyms in our industry. We have a lot of very laboratory specific content that doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people. And even though you may not intend to make someone feel stupid by using our acronyms or the specific industry jargon that we have, people can feel stupid. So we want to be careful that we don't cross that very fine line of speaking over them and using our expertise in just a way that they don't understand, or speaking under their ability to understand, which would then be condescending. So being told that you can't have what you think you should be able to get because of a policy that someone can't even explain. I've seen this happen a lot. Somebody will just use policy as the scapegoat, and they'll say, I don't know why. It's just our policy. We're not able to help you with that, or we can't do that. It's just the policy. So my remedy for this is, if you're ever in that situation where you do have to use policy as the reason why you can't do something, find out why the policy is in place. Find out why it's critical. Find out what's the importance, so that you can say, I'm so sorry, that is against our policy, and this is why. This is the reasoning behind it. People are going to be far more willing to accept that when we can explain the value or the reason, or maybe it's protecting patient information or protecting health information. You know, we all have to deal with the PHI issue. If we can explain that and what the risks are or the challenges would be if we didn't follow that policy, that will be more helpful. But just to say, sorry, it's against our policy, I just can't help you and I cannot do that, is a little frustrating. I'm sure you've been in that situation. People who don't know anything about the business they represent, essentially making themselves useless to you. So this is a lot like the other one. When they really just don't know and don't have a clue, they're useless. They waste your time. I don't like wasted time. I know that there's an example where I went in I had to resolve an issue. I spent, 15 minutes trying to go through it. And the person just had no idea what to do, what the issue even was, and they didn't even know who to talk to. And I'd spent, precious time. That was a very frustrating situation. All right, look, I'm here. I'm at the end. This is the last one. Sensing that you are being redirected to someone else simply because the person you are currently dealing with doesn't seem to want to help you. So it's that brush off, hey, I think Sally would be better answering that question. Why don't you go over there and talk to her? Feeling as though they just don't want to help you and they're just putting it off on somebody else and they're just kind of passing the buck or getting the monkey off their back. Okay, so that was just a few. I'm wondering if I covered anything that you thought about as a customer yourself, the things that drive you crazy. I suspect my list is long enough that I covered some of the things that you guys were thinking about. But my big question here is what's missing? Why did these things happen? So I am saying right here, in a defining moment, do you feel like maybe you do some of these things? Is it possible that as a customer service provider yourself, that you've maybe done some of those things that were on that list, or the things that you thought about that annoyed you? If you've turned the tables, have you ever done those same things as you're having to interact with others? So being honest with yourself is critically important. That's the first step. That's the first step to recovery, to being a customer have rather than a customer have not. So what does all this mean? What constitutes then great customer service from the customer's perspective? We can talk about what the skills are and what we need to do, but if you really think about it from the customer service perspective, what is it that they want? What is it that they're looking for? What is it that's meaningful to them? What is going to make them feel as though they're valued and they're important and that they're being heard and they're being responded to? So as I went through the list of things that really can irritate customers, there were some key things that I think were lacking, the themes that I was trying to get you to kind of think about. So here are the themes. As I've done customer service training over the last 18 years, there's a lot of approaches that I've taken in the past, a lot of different approaches. But when I sit down and I think about it, and I try to categorize it and say, from the customer's perspective, what are they looking for? I think it falls into these 6 key and critical areas. Attitude is critically important and will encompass a lot of things. Tone matters. We'll talk about that. Friendliness. Simply having a friendly disposition can make the difference from a customer's perspective. Are you helpful? Have you been unhelpful? Do you know enough about your organization to be helpful? Showing respect, understanding the value of customers and what they mean to your organization. And the work that we do, having the customers as patients, those are meaningful people, and those are big, meaningful activities that we engage in. Customers, patients are extremely important. And then this is another one, ownership. That's so critically important, and I think this is the one that's often not thought about and is lacking in some of the interactions that we have. So before I go into each of those 6, I kind of just want to go over this idea of customers? Because I think there's the obvious. There's certainly the obvious. The obvious are the patients, which I've referred to. The obvious are the physicians, or maybe we should say providers, clinicians, because there's so many different varieties out there now. Patients, families, those people are customers. And certainly in the phlebotomy situation, in the draw center, we've got the families there as well. Maybe other departments, we see them as customers. Third-party payers or our compliance organizations, or our certifications and credentialing bodies, all kinds of things, environmental services, other departments, ED, all the nursing units. We see nursing as a customer. Those are the obvious customer groups. And we think about customer service oftentimes in that exchange between me and who we provide our service to. And so I do want to kind of then draw your attention back to one customer group that I think gets often overlooked and is critically important. And I'm hoping that some of you are already thinking this, but it's the internal customer. It's our coworker. Our coworkers are critically important to the work that we do. And let me tell you why I think this. And you probably have already drawn the same conclusion. But I think this because if we don't do it well within our structures, within our organizations, within our own laboratories, within our own sections, and we don't provide good customer service to those people we work with day in and day out, I want you to think, what are we really providing for that external customer? I think if we don't do it well internally, we're providing chaos. We're providing an unsettling type of situation. We have to be able to support one another. We have to use good customer service skills, good supportive communication skills internally with our coworkers, because that's really who you're working with 98% of the time. Being in the laboratory model, we are removed. We are doing patient care, but we're not patient facing, except in phlebotomy. So really, most of you, when I talk about customers, for the most part, it's the people you're working with day in and day out that are standing right next to you or sitting right next to you or in the office right across from you. Those are the people that we have to use these customer service skills with. And I'm here to tell you, with all the years of consulting that I've done and the organizations that I've gone into to help them build a culture where service excellence exists, it's all about how they engage with their coworkers. It's all about how they engage with each other. It's the healthiness, the psychological healthiness per se of the department that they work in. And you have a psychologically healthy department because of good customer service skills, the ones we're going to talk about. So let's move on and we'll talk in detail about these 6 areas. So attitude, let me be clear and let me be direct, because that's really how I function. The attitude we're talking about is yours, not the customer's. And let me tell you, I cannot even begin to express how often I've heard people say, well, they had a bad attitude. What was I supposed to do? Or they were being rude. What was I supposed to do? Well, what do you think you were supposed to do? No matter what, you were supposed to be positive, helpful, respectful, friendly, and help them solve their problem. Their attitude does not have to dictate your attitude. All right, that's something to be very clear about. We're talking about your attitude. It doesn't matter at all how the customer presents themselves, how the coworker presents themselves. Your attitude matters. Your attitude dictates oftentimes the outcome of that circumstance. You have to own your attitude. It is a personal choice. It is one you make not just daily, more hourly or minute to minute. We have to own that attitude. We have to be positive. We have to choose that that's our disposition. It's not always easy. There's a lot that goes on, and our days are packed and loaded with a lot of work. But attitude makes all the difference. And I'll tell you, again, going back to the scenario with my children, I have a child that I drive to school almost every morning, and almost every morning he gets in the car and he says, I hate school. I hate Highland High School. It is the worst school ever. And I give him a darn good lecture almost every day. It hasn't mattered in the last 5 years. I don't know why I still do it, but I give him a lecture every day about how attitude can change the outcome. Your perspective on the world makes a difference. attitude is definitely a personal choice. You need to choose positive words and positive interactions. And I mean that. You need to choose it. Choose only to participate in actions that are associated with positive behavior. Be brave enough. And I mean that as well. Be brave enough to, when you're in a situation where people are not being positive, where people are not being appropriate, to be the one that steps forward and says, I'm kind of uncomfortable with this. Maybe we should look at the positive side of this situation, and be the person that I would call a positivity catalyst, the one that no matter what's going on or what the attitude is of others, you're the one that's always saying, but here's the cool thing about that, or here's what's so great about that person, or here's what I love about our department, or here's the thing that we do and I think we do it really well, or here's our contribution to the patient, and this is why physicians or clinicians rely so much on us. Are you brave enough to be that positivity catalyst? To be the one that's willing to interject the positive side of the world on things? Be the glasses half full person, not the glasses half empty. Again, I'm going to go back to this. It is a personal choice. It's one you have to make, and you have to make it all the time. But do that, and it makes a difference. Customers, from their perspective, someone who has a positive attitude is far more pleasant to work with, and they tend to be a little bit more giving and flexible when they're working with someone who has a positive attitude. All right, next one, tone. As I've done this training before, I think people are shocked when they hear some of this information about how people understand information. So in a conversation or a dialogue, people all the time, as you're engaging in a dialogue, are attempting to understand where you're coming from and attempting to get the meaning of what you're talking about. So tone in the components of understanding actually makes up 38% of understanding. So you heard me allude to this before. It's not necessarily what you say all the time, but it's definitely how you say it and how you're delivering it. That makes a difference. And go back to the idea of teenagers again. It's definitely how they deliver the message. Oftentimes the content is proper, but the tone is insulting, it is rude, and it is unacceptable. I'm talking about, of course, my teenagers. I'm sure you guys have teenagers that don't go there. That's probably not true. Tone can indicate emotional disposition as well. The tone makes people feel like you're approachable or not approachable. So be aware of that. So let me break down these components of understanding. And they're really fascinating. I think it's been interesting as I've shared this information with people before, how they are surprised at the breakdown. So I've already told you that tone is 38%. That's pretty significant. I bet you would never guess that content is only 7%. And I say that you would probably never guess that because that's what we spend our time thinking about. What are the words that I'm going to use to deliver a meaningful message? We wordsmith things. We try to be very clear about the very specific words that we use to be descriptive and to be accurate. Yet when it comes to understanding, only 7% of someone's understanding during the information that you're trying to share with them comes from the words that we use. So then that leaves us the rest with body language. So that's 55%. So that's the largest portion. That's more than half. Your body language is sharing a lot of information. Are you aware of it? So we've heard the trite thing about people putting a mirror at their desk so that they can see what their face looks like. It can be a terrifying and scary thing, and it's very anecdotal, but it works. What do you look like? What's your posture like? Are you standing straight up? Which actually can change the tone of your voice if you're standing straight up with your shoulders square, or if you're sitting and you're sitting straight, that can change the composition of the tone of your voice. But what does your face look like? What are your hands doing? What is your body doing? Are you pulling away? Are you rolling your eyes but saying the right words? That body language shows 55%. So I want you to kind of put tone and body language together, and scarily, it is 93% of someone's understanding. I think that alarms people and shocks them. So only 7% is content, but yet 93% is oftentimes something we don't think about. We don't really pay attention. What is my tone saying? Or what is my body language saying? So in order to be a better customer service provider, be so aware of your tone. Be aware of your tone. Be aware of your body language. Pay attention to it, just like you would pay attention to the content. Put a smile in your put a smile in your voice, and for that matter, just put one on your face as well. So the smile on your face will change the tone in your voice. And I know it's trite and I know it's anecdotal, but I know it works. That's the point. It works. So put a smile on your face because body language definitely will affect tone. Friendliness. Again, being very direct. Nobody likes a grouch. Nobody. Nobody wants to be around a grouch. Nobody wants to work with a grouch. Nobody wants to be around negative people. They might act like they do, but generally their psyche and their mental health, they don't want to be around a grouch. Nobody likes doing business with a grouch. So you have to be very aware of that, especially, if you're dealing with paying customers. I want you to think about that. I'm coming here, I'm giving you my hard-earned money, and you're being not so nice to me. You're being grouchy. That's really kind of frustrating. So friendliness is so critical. If you're friendly, you're showing some enthusiasm, and that will go a long way to build customer satisfaction. And let me tell you about grouchiness again. It just really sucks the life out of everyone and everything. It just does. It sucks the life out of your department. It sucks the life out of your section. It just sucks the life out of everybody. So friendly is really critical, and it's very important. And it does suggest to customers that you're interested and that you're willing. Be that positivity catalyst. Friendliness, I'm going to kind of get on a soapbox here. Friendliness, I want to be very clear, is a disciplined behavior. It is not an emotion. Be very clear on that. It is a behavior that we can choose, and it is not dictated by whether we like people or not, whether we like the job that we do or not. It is a disciplined behavior that we can choose. So I want you to think about this. In the workplace scenario, there could be somebody I don't like, I don't get along with, I maybe don't even respect. But that has nothing to do with my ability to choose respectful, friendly, disciplined behavior. So you have to definitely separate the emotion from the behavior and recognize that it's clear, it is doable. So it's the respectful thing to do. All right, moving on. Helpfulness. Helpfulness is really the idea of having basic knowledge. Now, of course, you don't know everything. You don't know every single thing about everything that goes on in your lab or in even your section or certainly in your health system. But can you be helpful? Can you guide and direct people? Do you know enough about your organization? Do you have a functional knowledge? Are you paying attention in staff meeting? Are you reading your newsletter in your organization? Are you reading the emails that come out to everyone and that talk about different changes that are going on in your organization? That willingness to have a basic understanding and be basically aware of the things that your organization does and that the services that you offer, those kinds of things, so that you can at least be helpful in directing people. Having that basic job knowledge is critical because you will stymie and frustrate customers if you don't have at least that basic skill. So the other part of helpfulness is really about problem solving. Do you have good critical problem solving skills? And problem solving is really made up of these components right here. So job knowledge we've talked about. You just basically have to be interested and engaged in your organization and know what's going on all the time as best you possibly can. All right, next, judgment skills. Judgment skills are the ability to form an opinion, to use your judgment, to be able to take in information and then use your opinion or your judgment to figure out what to do with it. So having good judgment skills. Being decisive, this is the ability to make a timely decision. Take the information that you have at hand and then being able to be decisive and make a decision and go forward with confidence that you can be giving good information. Flexibility. This is the ability to adapt to circumstances. We talked about a little bit before. It's hard sometimes with our policies and procedures to be flexible, but there's certainly areas that we can be flexible, and we need to try to be as flexible as we can to accommodate the needs and certain circumstances or conditions that our customers may present. Situation analysis. This is the ability to gather relevant and useful information in order to analyze and organize necessary actions in a logical fashion. So in a situation, what is going on? What are the circumstances? What are the different mitigating factors? What's everything? Can I pull all that together and then use judgment to be decisive and make a decision and go forward? And then, of course, initiative. That's now that I've done all the judgment, I've done the situation analysis, I get the big picture, I understand what's going on. Are you a person who can follow through? Can you take the initiative? Can you do what needs to be done? And sometimes what that is just making sure that you get the information and give it to someone else in a comprehensive fashion because they can take care of it. But that's what problem solving is. Maybe you don't solve a specific problem, but you help to facilitate the solution to the problem because you have enough job knowledge and you have good problem solving skills that at least you can aggregate the information that's necessary and then make sure that you pass it off to the person who can solve the problem. Respect. This one is just plain, straightforward. People deserve to simply just be respected, just as a human nature and a humankind type of thing. Be respectful. Customers have tremendous worth to our organization. Customers should feel that they are respected because of that very reason, because they're important to our organization. So let me give you some thoughts on why we should be giving respect to our customers. They are the most important people in our business, and I want to include our coworkers in this. They're important to our business either in person, over the phone, by mail, by email, by conversation, however we're interacting with them. They're critically important to the work that we do. They are not dependent on us. I think we get sometimes a false sense of security that folks are dependent on us and they have to send their lab work to us. It may not be the direct correlation that we're used to in the business world, say my choice of what grocery store I'm going to shop at today, but it does over time affect our ability to build customers and loyal customers. They are not dependent on us, and they over time can create customer insecurity in our organizations. So rather, they're important to every business. Our businesses are infinitely dependent on them. They are not an interruption to our work. Okay, I'm going to stop here because this is another soapbox of mine. I have heard too many times in the lab, on the bench, when the phone rings, that somebody will say something like, I'm so tired of being interrupted with phone calls. And then they answer the phone. And they think that that's not translated in their tone of voice or their demeanor or their attitude. They really do think they're just being a great customer service provider because they can push that to the side and they can answer the phone and be nice and friendly. But still, in the back of your mind, in your subconscious, you're seeing it as an interruption to your work. It's critically important that we in the lab industry understand the various facets of the work that we do. It's not just performing the tests themselves. It's not just drawing the sample. It's not just the triage of the sample. It's not just the IT portion of reporting out and billing accurately. It's answering questions. We're so complicated in this industry, there is no way that providers can understand laboratory medicine as well as they should. That's a huge challenge in our industry. We're facing that with our own organization, and our medical directors are looking at how can we possibly help providers make good laboratory decisions. This is your role. The phone call is not an interruption to your work. It is a critical and important component to your work. So be very cautious about that attitude about interruptions to your work. We just have a lot of different things that we're responsible for doing. Next thing, to continue with this list, they are not outsiders with meaningless impact on our business. To the contrary, they're the most important component of our business. A lot of times we treat those providers and those patients as outsiders who don't understand our work and our workflow and what we do and what the demands are and why we have to have certain things, certain ways. We treat them as outsiders. They're not. They are the most important component. Those are the people that we need to be checking in with and making sure that what we're doing makes sense, meeting their needs. They are not outsiders to our work, to the work that we do. They are not just names and numbers. They are people with feelings, emotions, needs, and concerns. In our work again, accession numbers can be critically important. And a lot of times we want to get a client number, we want to get an accession number, we want to get an MRN number, and we function from that. And we sometimes forget the niceties. The hello, how can I help you? Oh, it's nice to talk to you again today, Jane. What can I do for you? Instead, we get short and we get curt and we ask for the MRN or we ask for the accession or whatever it is, the number value. Be very careful. Make sure that we're dealing with people respectfully and thinking of them as people and not just procedures and processes. They are not people who should have to put up a fight for what they justifiably deserve. Too often, customers have to put up a fight. They're like, no, this is what you promised me. This is what you guys say you're going to do. They should not have to put up a fight for the things that we tell them we're capable of doing. Even if those things that we tell them we're capable of doing are hard to do sometimes, we need to not have to put them in a situation where they feel like they have to fight us to get it. So be very aware of that. They are people who come to us with their needs and they're looking for solutions, and we purport to provide those solutions. We need to keep that in mind. It's our job to deliver solutions. It's our job to deliver laboratory, not just results, but laboratory knowledge and laboratory intelligence. We're here to help provide a portion of that patient care, a huge portion of that patient care. In fact, 70 to 80% of the diagnostic value comes from the lab information that we provide. We're here to help them solve the problems. We're here to give them answers. We need to do more than just provide the lab number or the result value. We need to provide the intelligence behind laboratory testing. We need to be open to talking about the why and the implications of the laboratory testing that we're doing. Last concept here is ownership. This is what I see most often, the overtness of it lacking. You may not know all the answers, however, reassuring customers that you will assist them in getting the answers is critical. So it's really just giving them that reassurance that saying, you know what, I will help you get the answer to this, or I know exactly who to talk to, or we can get this information back to you by a certain time. Putting a commitment there of ownership that I'm going to follow through and I'm going to take care of this. The other thing that I think is really interesting about this is that when you say, I don't know, believe it or not, you build customer loyalty. The minute you say, I don't know, but I'll find the answer to that, people then really begin to trust you that you are being authentic, being sincere, and that you are vulnerable by saying, hey, I don't know the answer, but I'm willing to go get that answer. So I don't know actually builds credibility as long as you follow it with the statement that says, but let me find out and get back to you. You can't just say, I don't know, maybe come back in an hour or so. That's not the way we do good customer service. This is another critical component of ownership. To the customer, you are the organization. When they call the lab, they get you on the phone. You represent the lab. So they see you as needing to take ownership or wanting you to take ownership. You know, maybe you're in billing. Maybe, you're not in microbiology. And the question is a microbiology question. But whoever called, they got you on the phone. They're looking for someone to own their question and to give them some response. Just give them some commitment to solving the problem. Overt ownership is critical. So ownership is not always about being the one to facilitate or to solve the problem, but it's really about facilitating the satisfying outcome. Customers are more at ease and feel confident when there is an overt expression of ownership and responsibility. So it's the overt expression. We know we're going to follow through. We know I'm going to take that and I'm going to go talk to somebody else and I'll get back to them. But are you making the overt comment to them saying, I will do this and I will get it done by such and such a time, or I will call you back, or I will have Beth call you back and she should call you sometime before noon and you'll have that information. Those overt statements leave customers more at ease. They feel as though you care and that you're going to help them. The friendly, helpful, respectful, ownership, all those things come into play. The last thing I really want to talk to you about is, are you willing to make the rubber meet the road on this? So I've provided an assessment tool that you'll be able to use, and that tool is available from the PDF that's available on the landing page for this presentation. you can download that PDF and the assessment tool will be a part of the handout and you can reference it through that. It's really a profile that allows you to rate yourself. Are you really a customer service have or are you a customer service have not? And I've met a lot of customer service have nots in my lifetime. And I've met a lot of them, unfortunately, in the lab industry as I've done this as my career. So this assessment tool can be used a variety of ways. Personally, you could take it. It's very descriptive. It goes through a lot of different elements that you can look at. You can read the description and rate yourself from 0 to 5, with 5 being the best. You can just do that as a personal assessment tool. Those of you who are managers out there, this is a great tool to use during the evaluation process. I know that a lot of us use self-assessments. We have our employees, when we do an annual assessment, have them do a self-assessment. This is a great tool for your employee to do as a self-assessment and for you as a manager to do as well, and then compare notes. The other thing is, if you're truly bold and you want to take this into the fold and really go kind of full force on this, you can use it as a 360. So you can then use this tool if you're doing an evaluation on an employee, ask them to select a couple of peers that they would trust to give them an honest feedback and evaluation, have a manager do an evaluation of that employee, maybe have someone from another department, a customer specifically that that employee engages with often, and get a lot of feedback and then see where they are on customer service. A lot of times when we go to annual reviews, they're hard when it comes to these soft skills. It's hard to assess this kind of information when it comes to the soft skills. We have to oftentimes do it anecdotally. This gives us some kind of assessment tool to talk about specific skill sets that you can rate yourself on. So when you've done that, there's at the end of the handout, you'll see the proficiency level. And I've kind of taken a funny approach to this, but first of all, if you're 160 to 129 is a score, you rock. I think you're pretty great. You do this, you get it, it makes sense to you. If you're 128 to 97 on your score, you know, you're pretty impressive. There's nothing shameless about that. It's pretty not shabby at all. Well, when you get to 96 through 65, you know, you're a bit wishy-washy, but you know, the effort is appreciated. So now when you start getting to 64 to 33, I would expect that you could do better than that. And you should probably do better than that. Then once you get down there to 32, and it says 32 to 1, but I guess it's possible to score 0. You truly do need some remedial intervention. And it would be important to be very careful about your engagement with customers and coworkers at that point. So I hope that I've been able to share with you some perspectives on customer service attributes, key elements, from the customer's perspective, what they find to be critically important to feeling satisfied and feeling valued at the end of an interaction with you and your organization.